and welcome to a new episode of Her Voice. Technology has played a big role in changing the way how our children learn, get entertained, how they interact with friends. It has impacted their level of creativeness and how they behave in society. Today's children use more technology compared to kids in 1990. Many technological companies are inventing technological tools for kids, and technology has both positive and negative impacts on our children. As much as technology has changed the way our kids learn or entertain themselves, it has also affected their ability to learn and have real entertainment with their friends. It is not bad to give our children technological tools like iPads, video games, computers, etc., but it is our role as parents to guide them on how to use this technology and also set limits on when to use specific technological tools. Internet technology and video games have become addictive to so many children. Many kids have become victims of internet predators and others have become video game addicts, which leaves them with no time to interact with each other or with other children, and this has resulted in increased cases of loneliness and depression amongst children. The most common technologies used by children include video games, smartphones, television, computers, tablets, internet, social networks, chatting services, and much, much more. Let's look at some of the negative effects of technology on children and also debate on what parents can do to reduce on these effects of technology on their children.
A mere 20 years ago, children used to play outside all day, riding bikes, playing sports and building forts. Masters of imaginary games, children of the past created their own form of play that didn't require costly equipment or parental supervision. Children of the past moved a lot and their sensory world was nature-based and simple. In the past, family time was often spent doing chores and children had expectations to meet on a daily basis. The dining room table was a central place where families came together to eat and talk about their day, and after dinner became the centre for baking, crafts and homework. Today's families are different. Technology's impact on the 21st century family is fracturing its very foundation and causing a disintegration of core values that long ago were the fabric that held families together. Juggling school, work, home and community lives, parents now rely heavily on communication, information and transportation technology to make their lives faster and more efficient. Entertainment technology, TV, internet, video games, iPads and cell phones have advanced so rapidly that families have scarcely noticed the significant impact and changes to their family structure and lifestyles. A 2010 Kaiser Foundation study showed that elementary-aged children use on average 7.5 hours per day of entertainment technology. 75% of those children have TVs in their bedrooms and 50% of North American homes have the TV on all day. Gone is dining room table conversations, replaced by the big screen and takeaways. With the growth of technologies, teenagers and young people are becoming more dislocated from society. Isolation is one form of this problem. The Japanese phenomenon of hikikomori, whereby young people, commonly males and more increasingly adults, sequester themselves using only technology to keep in touch with society, is believed to affect almost 2 million people worldwide. Social interaction results in levels of stress and distress to the degree that the individuals cannot cope and seek refuge instead in an environment which they feel is fully within their control. Additionally, education is being transformed by technology. Stimulating students is not a matter of making a great speech or a dominant lesson anymore. Educators need to be brought down to a teenager's level of understanding. The needs and wishes of modern youth are very different from those of their parents. The most inspiring tool for children, teens and their lifestyle is the internet, mobile technologies and computers. Teenagers and young people also have changed in comparison with teens in the past, taking into account eating habits, an active way of life, spending free time and the importance of music and fashion. The most important change, however, is that they are a technology generation. For teens in today's world, mobile phones, internet, music, movies, television and video games are very important. Most teenagers prefer watching television and playing computer games to reading books. They dislike reading because watching television or playing online role-playing games is easier and they do not have to use their own imagination. Computer games have the capacity to provide teaching opportunities, but they are also harmful to health. Teenagers as well as children prefer to spend a lot of free time in front of a computer rather than to walk, play football, go swimming, or just simply meet a friend in the park and have a chat. The long-term effects of these changes are not likely to be evident for at least 3 more generations.
Now, to talk about this new generation of gadgets and technology, I have with me in the studio Diana Izzadeen, who's a child educator at the University of Middlesex. Welcome to the show, Diana.
Nice to meet you. Thank you.
Diana, now electronic technologies are behind the rapid change in the world of PlayStations to iPads and iPhones. Everyone now, young or old, owns at least a mobile phone. What's happened to the good old-fashioned games, which is like playing outdoors, sort of visiting friends, just playing in the park?
Well, that's a very good question, actually, because the other day I was reading online where a lady was talking about a journal, and she was saying that in her old days, in her childhood, they were, they only play outside, they go outside, they meet friends outside. There was no such thing as Facebook.
That's right.
So I think where the more technology that comes out, for example, iPhones, iPads, iPods, all sorts of generations, they've got them into a fact where, oh, look, you've got this technology, come along, play with it, use your music there, go on Facebook.
Yeah.
But I feel personally that using Facebook, using technology, iPads, iPods, they're all wasting time wasters, to be honest with you. Because not only is it distracting young kids, children, teenagers, it also leads to bullying, online bullying. What I mean by online bullying is that children are getting into situations where they, for example, post a picture online, and then if they're too skinny or too overweight, then people will start commenting.
Leave sort of negative comments about them. That's true. Yes.
And then they start sending messages online, private messages, saying really horrible things about them. And then that's when, the cyberbullying starts. So in my point of view, in the olden days, where we all had our fun, we go out play, that's all changed now. We're in the 21st century. Everything changes year by year. It's very difficult. Yeah.
More and more children, actually, and especially teenagers, we're talking about, they do have iBoxes. They have like one and PlayStations and TVs in their rooms, and with consent from their parents, who obviously gave them and bought these sort of iBoxes and game stations and TVs and gave it to them as presents. Are parents aware of what teenagers might encounter within these enclosed rooms? Because obviously they've got all these gadgets within, in their rooms, including the Xbox and the iPads and so on. But yet, parents think, let's just leave them be. As long as they're engaged, as long as they're not making too much noise, as long as they're happy, that's fine. We'll leave them be. Can't they see that there are problems behind doing such a thing, and they're harming their child rather than doing any good?
Now, using an Xbox or PlayStation, there is, we can say, okay, you can use it moderately. Okay, so for example, if you do your homework, you can play an hour on the Xbox.
Yeah, but we talk about children that actually spend hours, even throughout the night, just sitting there playing with their games, with their game stations and so on, and on their mobiles.
Yeah. Okay, so in this situation, what parents can do is that, okay, they can take it out during term time. Come the weekend, they can put it in, say, for example, on a Saturday in the evening after they've done their homework for an hour, plug it back in, they can use it. Otherwise, throughout the week, they just confiscate it from them. But it's all down to what sort of games they're playing. Now, there are age restrictions on games.
Quite often you find that they don't actually take that into account. They'll buy the game thinking it's rated 10 or 8, and yet the kids will just sort of play with it regardless of what age it is.
Yeah, this is where the adult needs to step in, the mum or the dad. So, for example, if the child is going out to play to buy a game, say, for example, that has guns on it. So we need to be wary. We need to teach our children that what's right and what's wrong. So, for example, if a child wants to buy a game which has, say, for example, Grand Theft Auto, and definitely for over 18s, and a child wants to buy that game, we need to say to that child, well, look, it's over 18, it's not for your age. Oh, have a look, there's an alternative to this one. So it's more about compromising, going around and saying, well, there's an alternative to everything. So yeah, so boundaries, compromising, and moderating is my, my key advice, really.
Now we're talking about teenagers, but let me give you an example. The other day I was out shopping, and this child was crying. He was probably about three years old, and it was clear that he was crying because he wanted sweets, and it was just at the checkout. And then the mother was getting really frustrated with him. She was trying to sort of quiet him down and so on. And then all of a sudden, I thought she was just going to come out with the sweet and give it to him and say, yeah, here you go. Yeah. All of a sudden, she brought out the iPad and she gave it to the child. And the child happily sat there, swiping through the actual screen. And I was just completely gobsmacked seeing a child of 3 being able to, sort of
I think
control
personally,
the screen.
I was also reading another journal online the other day as well. And both parents work. The mum and dad, they both own a business. And obviously the mum was doing her business online and her baby was crying. And she took out the iPad and she gave it to him, apparently. But in my opinion, that's absolutely wrong. I know that some people might say, well, what is she talking about? Well, because instead of giving, for example, say a book to read or something else to do.
Yeah, but you're talking about a 3-year-old here.
Yeah,
this is how young. Even I've been hearing about toddlers as young as like sort of 1, where they would actually need the iPad next to them so that they'd be able to sleep. So rather than having their lovely little sort of cover, sort of holding it tight, no, they've got the iPad.
Yeah, that's completely wrong. For example, also there are kids as young as 6 months who are watching TV. And they're playing on the iPad as well. They look around on the iPad. In my opinion, I have a baby myself. He's 9 months. Instead of, for example, I have the TV on. Instead of asking him or letting him watch the TV, I say, okay, I try and distract him with a game. Or I give him like a little book, his own, baby book, where he can, flick through. Or alternatively, I just switch the TV off completely. Because at the end of the day, having a TV or iPad or iPod on, it's not only going to, affect their sleep, it's going to affect their grades at school. Yeah. It's going to affect their attitude, and it's going to, affect them emotionally.
But it's going to affect also their internal mechanisms of self-regulation because it's trying to regulate. They need to be able to regulate these things. Once they grow older. Yeah. But as they grow older, if they become addicted at such a young age, there is nothing that's going to stop them from being obsessed or addicted to it.
Yeah. Now, another thing is that it's also going to affect for example, their communication skills. Absolutely. So, for example, when you're having a face-to-face conversation, it's going to make them a bit more anxious in the way they talk with that person. Their eye contact, so they're going to find it really difficult actually interacting with that person. Not only their language skills, but their face-to-face skills as well. Also, for example, when they're talking on the phone, when they're interacting with other people outside. Yeah.
Right. Well, actually, I've got on the phone. I've got Yasser somewhere. He's actually not a teenager. He's a medical student, and he's going to. We're going to speak to him and see his point of view about being obsessed with video games. Hello, Yasser, and thanks for being with us so early in the morning.
Hello, Dina. How are you?
There. I'm fine, thank you. Yasser, you're a medical student, but with a great interest in game stations and social media. How did your interest in computer games start, and what draws you to them?
Okay. When I was 4, I started playing games on our old computer. That was back in 1996. Then when I was 12, I got PlayStation 1 on my birthday. And I used to play lots and lots of games on it. Then I didn't buy PlayStation 2 or 3 because I had to switch back to computer gaming. But then only last year I switched back to PlayStation 4. And currently it's the main thing I play games on. And I still buy games for it until now.
Wow, that's brilliant. How long did you spend on a game? And do you feel that playing video games offers you the mental and visual stimuli that allows you to forget where you are and makes you feel you're totally in control?
You can say that, yeah, because currently games have stories, and it's not just a game. You feel like you are inside a movie, but you have total control, like you said. So it's my main interest right now. I mean, when I have some leisure time apart from studying or having something to do, I just play games, and I have great fun playing my games.
That's brilliant. I mean, we've noticed that many kids tend to stay up all night secretly playing video games night after night. And the loss of sleep causes them to become emotional wrecks, and their grades and performance at school begins to slip. Now, like any other addiction, they can't get enough of it. Now, you're a medical student. How did you manage to keep up with your studies and play your favorite Xbox games?
Actually, that was the difficult part of it, because sometimes I lose control over myself. But that was when I was younger, and sometimes my parents had to keep my PlayStation away so I can focus on my studies. But now I think I have more control over the process. I know when it's right to play and when it's right time to study. You know, just a matter of priorities.
Yeah.
Like when you grow old, you have to focus on your future, your career, and yeah.
That's right. Yeah. And I mean, would you see yourself sort of carrying on playing video games, and maybe your children in future? Would you actually allow them to do that?
If I had the time for it, I don't see why not. It's just that I'm starting my residency program in a year from now, and I think I won't have much free time like now. In Egypt, we return back home for only 1 day per week when we are in our residency. So basically, there will be no time for playing games, you know. So that's the thing. But as I said, if I had the time for it, I don't see why not.
And what about your children? What about your children? Would you actually, in future, when you have your own family, would you allow your children to do and be sort of, you know, obsessed with video games like you are?
If it doesn't affect their studies, and I don't see why not as well.
I see.
It's a great thing for them, I guess.
Yeah. Just now, finally, and before we end our call, I just wanted to ask you, are you a Facebooker or an Instagrammer or a Snapchatter? And what fascinates you about the world of social media?
I mainly use Facebook, yeah.
Facebook, yeah. And are you addicted to it? Do you find yourself sort of hours and hours sort of surfing through?
It's not about hours, but about I don't spend much time on it, but I check it regularly.
Yeah.
Like many times per day, but each time is short and brief.
What pleasure do you get out of it? What's the fun behind for surfing the Facebook and so on?
Just connecting with my friends. Nothing more than it. And I guess it's about connection with friends, learning about news.
Yeah.
Not much.
Okay. All right, Yasser, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you for joining us, and good luck with your studies.
It's my pleasure. Thank you. Thank you, Dina.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Now back to you, Diana. What happens in many homes now at the moment is that the parents, they buy the children the iPads, the video games, the mobile phones, and they play with their kids for some time. The kids initially enjoy them, you know, they enjoy the time with their parents playing along, but the excitement eventually wanes off, and the kids come home from their friends' houses asking for the more advanced sort of iPads or, you know, gadgets and so on. Partly out of guilt for not playing with them more often. You'll find that the mums and dads agree to buy the kids the advanced video games and the advanced sort of gadgets and so on, and not paying more attention to what's on them or how much time they are spending playing them. So after all, you know, it just keeps them sort of at home and out of trouble. This is what parents think. Parents might speculate and say, where's the harm in doing it? But how would you answer them? Because that's what parents would be saying. Where's the harm?
Well, the harm, firstly, is that it's time wasting. Well, you can use technology in a more wiser way for example, doing homework, if you're researching your homework, or if the parents are, working on the internet, for their jobs, things like that. Now, when parents do go and buy, more advanced games or technology for their children, then it's more, it puts, kids in trouble, not out of trouble, because they're getting distracted from their schoolwork. Now, when it comes to this case, the parents need to put a time limit, like I said before, on how long they can go on that game for. So if the child still does refuse, they can suffer the consequences at the end of the day, because in the end, they're the ones who are going to miss out on
but what I often find and I hear is how sort of teenagers, they'll be sort of doing their homework or whatever it is on one side of the table, and then on the other side they've got Facebook working, they've got Instagram working, they've got Twitter, they've got Snapchat and everything. That's sort of all happening at the same time. Yeah. So again, your parents think that they're up there, doing their work, doing the homework, but they're not, because they're distracted. Talking to their friends, they're still socializing.
Now, I actually had a friend as well who's a mother of one boy who's a teenager and one daughter who's a teenager as well. She actually confiscated his phone from him while he was doing his homework upstairs. So she confiscates it for 3 hours while he studies for exams, does his homework, or whatever he needs to do. So she takes his phone, his laptop, and she makes sure that he's actually focused on his schoolwork.
Yeah, but again, you're doing that for a limited period of time. But you do find that the kids, especially with the mobile phones and with all these social networks that are sort of happening at the same time, with connection with different people, there are dangers out there, though, isn't there? So because you don't, as a parent, you don't know who your child is talking to, you don't know who he's actually communicating with. There's a lot of very sexually orientated websites out there, and even apps that children can easily download. So it's an open world for them. It's open virtual world.
One thing is that the minimum age for using Facebook is 13.
Yeah, but
there are parents who actually make accounts for their kids who are younger than 13.
That's true. Yes.
Now that's where the danger starts, because there are stories on the news where children are being sexually exploited because they're underage.
That's right.
So, parents have to be very careful where they sign their kids up for, because it's not a game, to be honest with you. Yeah. They've got a game, but it's factually, it's not a game, in real life. So they've got to be very careful on what their kids are doing online.
Well, actually, I've got Sue Palmer, who's going to be joining us in a minute, and we're going to speak to her more about how to actually be able to control children's obsession and addiction with social media. Okay, we'll be with her. Now, it gives me great pleasure to welcome to the show Sue Palmer, who's a writer and consultant in British education and is best known for her books Toxic Childhood and 21st Century Boys. She is also one of UK's most well-established authorities on the teaching of literacy. Welcome to the show, Sue, and thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
Sue, first of all, I like the words techno-tot, which you used to describe how iPads have become the modern day equivalent to a comfort blanket, as recent research found 10% of children under 4 are put to bed with a tablet computer to play with as they sort of fall asleep. Where has the good old storytelling time?
It came out recently.
Yes. I mean, where has all these sort of good old sort of storytelling time between the parent and the child gone?
Well, I think there has been a decline in people doing bedtime stories for quite a long time, because children have had televisions in their bedroom. From the literacy point of view, this is absolutely disastrous, but it's also disastrous from the child's emotional point of view, because part of the story at bedtime has been the emotional contact, between mum and child, and that's a very special time, I think, and it's an awful shame if a piece of technological equipment, is put in place of the parent.
That's right. And it is actually the parents that's actually been put into place. It's rather, which is obviously the whole responsibility lies on the parent, more or less.
I think the main problem is that all this technology has sort of crept up on us really very, very rapidly. I mean, it's been really within the last 30 years that it's taken over our lives. And there just hasn't really been time for people to think, is this a good idea? Oh, he likes doing that. Well, it doesn't seem to be any harm. It's just been people have not really thought it through. And it's only now that we've reached this saturation point and you are getting technotots, children under the age of 1 who are, playing an awful lot on tablet computers and so on, that really we've got to sort of stop and think, no, parents need to start as they mean to go on. And for the first 2 years, the medical advice is screen-free zone, no screen time at all for children. And that way, that bond between parent and child has time to develop,
Yes.
and then carry on. Yeah. And it makes it much, much easier to limit use of screen time as time goes on.
Right. I mean, it's been 10 years since the publication of your book, Toxic Childhood, which warned of the dangers of too much screen time on young people's physical and mental health. Can you tell us more about this book?
Well, yes, it's just been updated. So there's a completely updated edition come out this last year.
Brilliant.
But it was simply that I was working in literacy in the UK all over the country in the late 90s, and teachers everywhere were telling me that children's attention span was getting much poorer. They found it more difficult to listen. And in some parts of the country, language was deteriorating.
Yes.
There were all sorts of little issues. And I just started researching back in the late 90s, why might this be? And there are lots and lots of reasons. I was 8 years looking into all sorts of areas of child development, but I think that it's not so much just that they're spending an enormous amount of time now looking at screens. I mean, they reckon between 5 and 6 hours a day in the UK on recreational screen time. It's not just that what's happening on the screens and the influence that can have on children and the way it can affect attention. It's also what it's replacing, because what children need from, the moment they can move and smile at parents, they need social interaction and they need to be in the real world, moving about physically in the real world. And that's what nature has determined, we do for millennia and millennia, and yet now suddenly in 30 years, children are interacting far less with other people and they're moving about far less. And obviously that's going to have a long-term effect on development.
Of course. I mean, in your sort of words, how do you detoxify children's lives?
I think the first thing is awareness. And we have to sort of recognize that although all these technological devices are terrific for grown-ups and they do make our lives much more entertaining and things can be a lot easier through them and a lot quicker, certainly. What's good for grown-ups is not necessarily good for small children whose brains are still developing. And, it takes a whole childhood to develop all these capacities that we human beings have, like being able to put off wait for rewards to happen rather than wanting them immediately.
That's right.
Things like developing self-confidence because one's been out there and developing social competence because one spent lots of time interacting with other people. So it's a whole childhood's worth. So once you know that and you think, okay, medical advice is no screen time for the first 2 years, then no more than 1 to 2 hours thereafter, and monitor and mediate and introduce your children to the technological world. And then gradually, by the time they're moving towards double figures, they're going to be able to use it independently, but not be controlled by it, as is happening with so many children now.
That's true.
I'm starting talking to mums about saying, think about it like the cooker.
Oh, yes.
Because you wouldn't let a little baby or a toddler near the cooker because it would be dangerous.
That's true. That's true.
And then
Absolutely.
as time goes on, you teach them how to use it and how it works.
That's true. That's absolutely right. Just one more question before we actually let you go. It has become much more difficult to help children focus their attention on academic study when they're growing up in a world of instant gratification and digital quick fixes. And yet, in the show today, we spoke to a young medical student that has excelled in his academic studies despite his obsession with game videos and all the new gadgetries. How would you explain this?
Oh, I don't think... I mean, clearly you can can excel in terms of academic studies, but basically human beings are not brains on legs. We're bundles of flesh and blood and emotion, and just being very, very good at working things out is rather like being a computer. So I hope this young person has a sort of balanced life as well, because in order to enjoy being alive and fulfill the sort of, the life that we as human beings get enjoyment from and well-being, we need to be a whole person, not just develop cognitively. And that's one of the problems, is that technology can make brains race.
Yes,
yes. And that means you want to carry on and do things very fast and be watching them all the time. But what we need is to slow down, particularly as children, particularly those first 7 precious years when the brain and body are developing, the most they ever will. And we're laying down the neural networks that will determine who we are for life. Children need opportunities to just get out into the outdoors, particularly in green places, to play, to be with the people who love them, to spend time learning lots of skills and lots of things that they can develop as interests as time goes on.
That's lovely. Sue Palmer, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. We're going to, how about we actually watch this report that highlights the bad, ugly and good of social media addiction amongst children and teenagers. Let's watch it together. According to a Daily Mail report, more than half of children have used an online social network by the age of 10. Facebook tops the list of sites that children sign up to underage, with 52% of 8 to 16-year-olds admitting they had ignored the official age limit, the social age report for online safety advisory website Know the Net found. Other popular sites include WhatsApp, used by 40% of 8 to 16-year-olds, BBM 24%, Snapchat 11% and Ask.fm 8%. The study found that although 59% of children are social networking by 10 years old, just 32% of parents feel very confident about helping them stay safe online. Poll found 21% of children had posted negative comments starting from an average age of 11, and 26% had hijacked another person's account and posted without a permission. Some 43% had messaged strangers starting from an average age of 12. The study suggests that children are most likely to post an image or video of themselves online or set up a fake profile for the first time at the age of 11, try Twitter and message a stranger at 12, and try services like Snapchat and Ask FM at the age of 13. 2/3, 67%, turned to their parents when they experienced difficulties online, the poll found. While 63% of parents check their child's internet activity at least once a week, more than a fifth, which is 21%, are not confident they could install parental controls, and just under a half, 46%, admit not being confident or aware of the school network internet policy. Children are gaining access to social media sites at a younger age, which could expose them to content, people or situations that are out of their depth, such as cyberbullying and sexual content, which they're not emotionally prepared for. A report from the Office for National Statistics found high levels of emotional problems, hyperactivity and poor behavior among youngsters who spent a long time on websites like Facebook, Twitter and Pinterest. The report found that between 2012-2013, 37% of children spent no time on social networking websites, while 56% spent up to 3 hours. Girls were far more likely than boys to spend over 3 hours on social networking websites. Also in 2012 and 2013, around 1 in 10 girls, which is 11%, spend over 3 hours on social networking websites compared with just 5% of boys. Parents can no longer protect children by simply trying to limit their online experiences. Instead, parents need to maintain an open dialogue and encourage children to share both good and bad online experiences, talk openly and straightforwardly about the risks they may encounter online without scaring them, and make sure they keep up with the latest social media crazes and work with their children rather than trying to control them. Joining me now on Skype is Maysa Akbek, who's a Syrian journalist based in Germany. Welcome to the show, Maysa, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Now, social networking sites are a major part of children's, teenagers and adults' lives, and a vital means of social interaction to the extent that it has become an addiction. How long will this addiction last, and is there a cure?
That's right. You're absolutely right. I mean, it's a very serious and hard problem at the same time. I see it a problem for all the generations. I mean, not only kids are now addicted, you can say in between brackets addicted, and also adults are addicted these days. I mean, social media sometimes can be very important and very useful. And of course, we know very well that nowadays it's a fade up area. I mean, fade down for newspapers, TVs, radios, etc. And all the new generation get their whatever they need to know via new websites and internet. Twitter, Facebook sometimes, if it helps, and some websites. It's supposed to be very, very useful and for our benefits. Almost the schools, the new schools and universities, and also the big companies use computers, and I mean later on for getting a job. But it's becoming at the same time a big problem when the child lives in the world of virtual world, as we can say it. I mean, it's the real life with experiences are fading away and getting out of everybody's life. And that means that less experiences with anyone get by dealing with others, with human emotions and feelings by this.
I see.
This is what I think.
Right. I mean, there are several dangers associated with social networking, which quite, sort of often we are aware of, like exposure to sexual material, racism, etc. But the most common one amongst children and teenagers in the Middle East and Western societies is the online bullying or cyber bullying, where the victims are targeted with posts that are overtly hostile and threatening, with the added invasion of privacy through posting of phone, filming and pictures, all to cause obviously intimidation and harassment. How could you prevent cyberbullying, and what role should parents and guardians play to help their victimized child?
Okay, this can be also on TV. I mean, we have like thousands of channels on TVs now, and anyone who has satellite and receiver at home could get many. I mean, as many as bad and good channels on TV in everybody's house. This can be controllable. The same could the parents do. I mean, I think parents should talk more to their children and to give them an idea about what's going on, and to give them the information they need to know. I mean, to make them more sophisticated about what's going around them. And maybe they can restrict the times they could use these new technology machines like computer or smartphones or whatever. They can just encourage them and take them to clubs where there are like some children like I mean the same age. They can build new relations in sport or music or any activities, useful activities, which would keep them a little bit away from this. I mean, but this is a problem for, as I said before, for adults. I mean, if the child sees the mother or the father all the time on smartphones, from phone to computer and vice versa, then he will be normally affected, and he will be doing the same as his parents do. I think that the first step is for the adults to control this, and then teach the child how to control this as well.
Okay, and a colleague of mine pointed out earlier how sadly the amount of likes on a Facebook post has become testament to one's social acceptance and likability, as this then plays directly into young people's vulnerability and the need for acknowledgement and sense of belonging or feeling connected. Shouldn't we be worried? I mean, all I see or all you hear about how these kids compare themselves with the number of likes they get on Instagram, or followers on Instagram, on Facebook. What does that tell you about the nature of our, the kids of this new generation of gadgets?
This is actually an important issue for all of us. I mean, the first thing when I post something on Facebook, I look after 5 minutes how many likes I got. I mean, and this something. I mean, can get give self-confidence to a person, but at the same time. I mean, everyone has to put in mind that this is a virtual world. It's not a real world. And many of these people who are on this small screen are not real. And many of them, we don't know them very well. In the first moment when we meet one of them, we might get in a trouble or a quarrel with them because we are so much different from each other. It's not necessary. If we post something nice and someone likes it, that it means that this person that we can get along with. I mean, as I said earlier, I think again I repeat this: the parents have the most. I mean, the responsibility for the children, just to make them know what's real and what's not real. At the end of the day, this technology is always a cause of isolation. That means that the child or any person, even the adult, who would, the more he gets involved in these things, the more he is isolated from the society and the real life. More he will not be able to face any problem which could face him in his work or school or with teachers or whatever, and it depends on the how the mind of the person how can really differentiate and put everything in its own place. And allow me to give you an example. I mean, that last week we have here a very big newspaper, and a famous newspaper called Die Zeit in Germany. Die Zeit in English means the time. And it talked about this issue, and it took a picture of a couple before they go to bed, I mean, before they sleep, and they just took their mobiles out of their hands, and then they got the picture of them, and their hands looked, everyone was looking at the other side of the partner, and both hands were like this, as if they are holding their smartphones in their hands. And then, and that was really a brilliant idea, because they are used to hold the mobile in their hands. Yeah. And then they said that the first step to deal with this is to know that you have a problem, because knowing is the first step to cure this addiction and this, what we can call it.
I mean, it's an obsession more like, because I mean, I personally can relate to this, and I think, a lot of even teenagers and youngsters that can relate to it, because the first thing you do before you go to bed is actually check your mobile and look at your messages and check your Facebook, and then the first thing you do when you wake up is again check your mobile.
That's right.
And look at your
had
Facebook
this problem
and messages.
earlier, and then I could control it. I just decide to go to bed. I just put it away from me, very far away from where I sleep. I don't hear it, I don't see it. Yeah, I just want to control this. I mean, I want to be independent. I mean, with these technology, it means that I'm controlled by others. This is what I think. This is my idea about it.
Yes, Maysa, go ahead. Please ask your question.
Actually, I just wanted to say something very quickly before I go. That it's very normal for the children in a certain age to be addicted for something like any other tool they used to play with. But when we don't focus so much on this, they will, after a while, leave it. After, talking to them and telling them what are the problems of this. But it's normal, and we shouldn't be worried if for a while a child is so much involved in this. But after a while, maybe more activities will put it aside and start their normal life again. This is what I wanted to say. And
That's
thank
wonderful.
you.
Thank you so much, Mace, again, for taking part in the show and for your valid points of view. And, thank you very much. Have a good day.
Thank you, you too.
I asked one of my sort of guests, and it's, as you heard, the more likes you get, the more popular you are.
Yeah. I would definitely agree with that.
Yeah.
For example, I do have so many friends on Facebook personally, but to be honest with you, I've got like 500 friends on there, but I don't see only like 2 or 3 people on there.
So it becomes like a competition. You think like, okay, you've got 1,000, I've got 500.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's a virtual world.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
You don't even, sort of some of these people that you have on there, they might not even go on Facebook.
Now you've got also another thing with Skype. Now, the good thing about Skype is you can have interviews on there. So, for example, if you're applying for like if you're having like if you're applying for a job online and obviously you can't travel to that country, then the best way to have an interview is online through Skype. So that's one positive side. But if a child is underage, and say they're about 6 or 7, and they do have a Skype account, they don't know who that other person is online. It could be a man who's over 30. So that's one danger to Skype. So, but yeah, it's a really good way to actually interact.
So there is some positive things about social media.
Definitely. Yeah, I would agree.
Okay, that's brilliant.
No problem.
All right, now we already spoken about social media. So I just wanted to actually confess how I personally, as an adult, enjoy going onto my Facebook and my Instagram and then checking, my account, and probably, people probably here, my colleagues in the studio would sort of say yes to that because they know what I'm like on Facebook. But how we all have become a generation of social media addicts? How has this all elapsed and changed?
Now, this all goes down to self-confidence, basically. So this all has changed because we go on Facebook, okay? We have all our friends, okay? Some people we don't even know, okay? So we add people. So we want to make more friends on Facebook, more friends on Instagram, Twitter. But the more friends you have, the more popular you are. But in reality, you might only have 2 or 3 friends, okay?
That's true.
So, that you daily see.
Yeah.
But online, it's more about, the retweets, the shares, the likes, and that's where you feel that because you have so many likes, so many retweets, or so many shares, that you feel confident within yourself.
Well, is the positive thing, though. I mean, we don't need to be negative all the time about the use of social media and so on. But on the positive side, I personally feel that it connects me with people that I live abroad that I don't get to see quite often, with family, with friends. And this is the only opportunity where I can actually speak to them and share my pictures with my family with them.
Now, personally, I mean, it is a very good way to actually interact with other people because for example, I actually come from a background where I studied linguistics as well at university, and it also helps you to interact with your professors.
Yeah.
So if you're talking about, your assignments, your work, your dissertations, also you can, go on social media where you have to, get help with your friends, from your homework. You can also use it as a pleasure where, you just want to, get in contact with family who live quite abroad, for example, America, Australia. Also, for example, on, Twitter, for example, if you go on there, you can look at the news, what's going on around the world. For example, you've got LinkedIn, where it's more about work-wise.
Yeah.
So there's always a positive side, to social media as long as you use it moderately.
Question to you, Diana, just before we end the show. If we actually forget about social media and get rid of our mobiles and get rid of our iPads and everything around us, all the technology around us, do you think we will be able to persevere and live a normal life? Because you know, I personally, like I said to Sue, I can't live without my mobile, and I can't live without the fact that I have to check it in the morning and I have to check it before I go to bed. So if we get rid of it all, can we actually persevere and live and enjoy our lives without it?
To be honest with you, no, because apparently you can't really just write a letter to, for example, your friend who lives 10 minutes away and say, oh, I have to go and post it down the post box and send it down to my friend and say, can you come round for a cup of tea? It's very difficult, really. So you can't really live without social media, work-wise, education-wise, social-wise, because it's the only way that can put you through the world, really. And it's the only way that put people together, connect people together, you know.
And it's also used quite often with politics. I mean, you'll find that social media, you know, all the revolutions that have taken part, you know, it's all happened on Facebook, on Twitter. And like you said, education as well, you know, quite a lot of educators actually advertise their services again on Facebook and Instagram and so on.
For example, you need, you know, the only way to find jobs as well is online.
That's
because
true.
Nowadays it's more about sending your CV through email. For example, Skype, like I said, is through social media.
Interviews and stuff.
So it's everything relies on the internet. So I personally cannot live without the internet.
I personally cannot live without it. I totally agree with you. I can't live without it, definitely.
No.
Okay, that's brilliant. Well, unfortunately, we have reached the end of our show. Thank you so much, Diana, as the Dean, for joining us today. And thank you to all our guests who contributed to today's show. I would also like to take this opportunity to send my regards to Tariq, who expressed his enjoyment in watching the show, and to Sally Sheikh for requesting this topic to be discussed on the show. Now, social media, of course, isn't going anywhere and is a big part of how teenagers communicate. But spending too much time managing their virtual identities can have a profound and negative impact on teens' actual lives. It's the way we communicate that's changing rapidly. Our children are the first generation to be born into a world that's constantly connected. Whether we like it or not, social media is a fact of life for our children that isn't going to go away. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.